Hi, everybody. Uh, I'm Sam Martino. I'm sure I have a lot of you in my other classes. I wanted to do a guest lecture for Tyler's class. I had guest lectures last semester, and things have just been so busy. I haven't really gotten to do them, but it's fun because all the people that I work with have gotten to do such interesting things in the game industry, and especially Tyler has done a lot of things that he can program circles around me at this point. As in, I have also done things that Tyler has thankfully not had to go through yet. So I wanted to be able to do this and do this guest lecture to go over lighting. And I want to go over lighting in a bunch of different ways because it's so important. For those of you that have me for CIT 140, when I went over audio, I said, audio can really make or break a game. Lighting is an extremely close second to that. Bad lighting can ruin a game. I mean, one of the telltale signs of an amateur video game is if things look flat and just that there's no shadows to anything, there's no lighting. Because even if it's 2D, you can find a way to do shadows. And I'll go through that. I have a couple examples. I've got to show off some stuff from Ashes of Kanaka, the first game that I ever worked on, RPG Maker, and I'm also going to show how we're doing lighting in Always Bet on Quack, the game that Tyler and I have been building this semester about ducks and gambling. But I wanted an excuse to go over the really exciting video game leak that happened today. We're getting an Oblivion remaster. I'm so excited. This was my absolute favorite game when I must have been like the end of middle school going into high school. I was obsessed with this game. I played it all day, every day, hundreds of hours on the Xbox 360 playing Oblivion, and it's it looks incredible. And one of the things that I think makes it look so good is they've redone their entire lighting system. So after I go through this, I'll talk about lighting systems really quickly, but I want to just kind of go through. I mean, you can see this is a great snapshot of just the difference now. And it's interesting because one of the main complaints is in that bottom right image, people are complaining that they're making everything brown, that it was an art style from like the PS3 era of games where you put this brown filter over everything. I argue that that's actually at like evening or sunrise or sunset, and that's why it looks the way that it does. You can see the heavy shadows, but like it's crazy that it can look that different based on the time of day, but that's what you can get from shadows. And especially when you have something like an open world game that you have an actual sun and have a real light source that's actually moving and has to calculate light direction and shadows dynamically, you can get some really crazy effects. And that's how, the Oblivion remaster looks so good. I mean, it just looks so good. I'm so excited for it. Um, the other one got bigger for me, but I mean, you can see the shadows come through so strong in the remaster, and it looks so much better. Like the lighting just looks incredible as it hits everything. I mean, even this with the sun setting over the Imperial City, it's crazy. And this is all done through lighting and different lighting effects. Even you can see in the Imperial City image, the Aurora Borealis above it. This is all done with lighting effects. So you can make these really, really incredible scenes just by having good lighting. And I really need to stress that because there are really so many tutorials on YouTube on how to make a beautiful scene, especially in something in like Unreal Engine. You can find like an hour, 2 hour long tutorial to make a map that looks as, pretty good, pretty close to this. And then if you can have actual really good lighting, that's how you can make these really incredible looking screenshots. But before I go into the projects that I've done personally, I want to talk a bit about lighting systems in different engines because they're very different. It's not something that 2D that games made in 2D really have to think about because you usually paint in your lighting and your shadows, and I'll show you that in Ashes of Kanaka, I had to paint in the shadows where the trees and everything were, because you can't really do it in 2D. But when you're dealing with 3D, the way lighting works varies greatly depending on what engine you're using. Unreal Engine is lauded for being having really fantastic lighting. They have some of the best lighting in the industry that you can access, and it always looks incredible. I say that, and it's funny because this is actually being made in Unreal Engine 5, so you can see the lighting. It looks incredible. Now, of course, there are engines that do lighting better. There's CryEngine, which is known for having the best, and Amazon Lumberyard also has a really fantastic lighting system. But they strive to get that lighting there because of what a difference it makes. I mean, you can point to anything made in CryEngine because it looks absolutely incredible. And the reason that it does is because it has such a powerful lighting system. That's why the original Crysis games would melt computers. It was something that was super demanding, but it looked really, really, really good. So going into how it would work for two-dimensional games, these are some of the maps that I did when I worked on Ashes of Kanaka. It was done entirely in RPG Maker, but my thing was that I didn't want it to look like an RPG Maker game. I did the basics of the map in RPG Maker, and then I took it out and took it into Photoshop, and then I painted on the dirt and the sand, and I tried to make it look less grid-like. So that's how you get like the path through here. And I had to do shadows along the tree line. It's important, and I actually there's an overlay that goes over all of these jungle maps that is a shadow tint, so everything looks darker than it actually is. So you're able to do lighting even when you have this kind of two-dimensional platform you're working with. um that's a good jungle one. But I mean, these are basically, there was such a thick tree line, so I was only painting like cutouts of light, and the shadow was essentially an overlay over the characters, so that when they came through the light, it was a break in the overlay, and it's like, oh, there's a break in the trees. This is all how you do lighting. And of course, keep in mind, I'm no artist. I did the best that I could in Photoshop in 2016, but you can definitely do really incredible things with lighting when it comes to painting it straight on. I actually, if I can find the OASE headquarters. No, we have I had this guy I used to work with, Matt, who who went through and did an attempt on the OASE HQ. I think it was this. But he went through and he painted on all of the darker spots on the water. Uh I know in the full game we actually have proper shadows because you can walk behind trees. And even this, I have to say, this I don't think this is the final image that I have from him, because even this looks rough because it's so bright. You don't have any shadows to really designate, like, oh, the sun isn't just directly above you pointing down. And that's what you always want to avoid in games. You never want your stuff to look flat, because that's always a sign of just unfinished work. Is if everything looks flat, it doesn't look professional. So any kind of way that you can show shadows and depth, you can do that with your lighting. It's a great way to do it. Now, going directly from 2D going into 3D, which I'm sure Professor Tyler has shown always been on Quack, but this is the game that we've been working on in Unreal Engine pretty much since the semester started. And when we're building it, there's something that we have to keep in mind that is something that you should always keep in mind when doing lighting, is that lighting can be extremely expensive. One of the most size heavy thing that you have in your game is going to be your lighting file. And you have to try and find ways to keep it low, otherwise people's machines can't run it. So especially when we're doing this game, which is going to be running on a server and a bunch of people can join the server, there's going to be a bunch of people all in one space. We have to be very conscious of the lighting that we're using. So what I do in Unreal Engine, and I'll go through a couple different techniques for how this works, but we have these lights here. are not actually light sources. The material within the object is actually set to glow, and you can set that, and this is all done in Unreal Engine, but you can set an emissive. And the emissive is the color that radiates from the material. And you can put this directly on textures and materials. So what this does is the actual light part of this light has this glowing material, and it actually illuminates the spaces around it. What's really fantastic about this is this entire area, every single thing in here is lit by those lights. There are no actual light sources in this part of the casino. I think there are in here because no, there are no light sources because they're all actually materials. If you do this, it makes the game run fantastic because but it works in certain cases. This is we're not done, of course. We still have to go through do lighting passes, and this is just our first run of things. Probably gonna make things a lot darker in here. But having everything through that is way better than having actual light sources. Now, you need to have actual light sources for different cases, and I want to go through that in a second. It's just there's reasons to do this. There are, and most of them are cost reasons. And when I say cost reasons, I don't mean, how much money something costs. I mean how much it costs for the computer to run it. If it's super heavy, then it's super expensive. And when you have now think if you've got a nighttime city, right? And if it's a nighttime city that has a bunch of office buildings, those office buildings are going to have lights that are on. We attempted to remaster Ashes of Kanaka, the first game that I just showed, the one that was done in RPG Maker. We attempted to remaster that in Unreal Engine, and one of the first cities is this Vegas casino style city, and it was at night. And so we needed all of these enormous skyscrapers that are filled with these huge casinos to have lights on. There was no easy way to do that because we couldn't just put lights on them. It didn't look right. And also, it was so expensive to just have actual lights on all of these different windows. So, what I had to do was I opened up the buildings in Maya. I got a plane in the tool, and then I just copy and pasted the plane over all of the different windows that I wanted to have on and off. So it took me weeks, multiple weeks to do that, but we had all of these Windows sets for all of our skyscrapers that actually, if it was daytime, you could just hide all of the windows, and when it was nighttime, you just turned the windows on. And because the windows just had an emissive texture on them, it wasn't actually having to process lighting calculations. So I could have like 20 different skyscrapers all lit up at night, and it wasn't actually demanding on computers for it to run it. That's really helpful. This is something that I've been able to do in Unreal Engine. And like I said, there's cases where it works and cases where it doesn't. Of course, I'm inside. What about when you're outside? Well, it depends. This is a nighttime scene, so like there are different ways you can get away with it. If it's nighttime, you can have stars in the sky and then have your lights come from artificial places. So for instance, we have street lights, and the street lights are never you never actually get beyond this point. So you're never going to see them, but they need to project a believable light display on the road. So these actually just have light sources coming out of them to do that effect. Now in Unreal Engine, there are multiple different light sources that you can use for your projects. This is a point light, and I'm sorry, this is a spotlight. A spotlight is great because you can have it project as if imagine there is a light source here. It will project a light to wherever you point it, and it will have an attenuation radius as if it is a big circle. So imagine you have a light somewhere that's pointing at something. That's what a spotlight is. So if we're doing street lights and things like that, it's fantastic. If you need something to just emit a light there is a point light, which is literally just a ball of light that you can put anywhere and it will emit light from that source. There are so many things you can do with it, and I should also note it's really easy to mess with stuff. I mean, this is light color. You can make it any color you want. And that's just there's also like you can change in the intensity of it, heat of it. So if you want to give a more cold, well, that's one of the cool things you can do. If you want let me see if I can show you that. We haven't put it. Okay, I'm sorry. So in post pro, so you can set the heat levels of your light sources. So if you want the map to feel colder, you can do that. If you want it to feel warmer, you can do that. And it's not just changing colors, it's changing hues as well as the actual intensity of the light. You can do all that with just the light sources, and that completely changes the way that your game looks. It's really incredible the things that you can do with your lighting and the differences that you can make with having good lighting. Especially, I work with Unreal Engine every day and I really love working with it. The lighting tools available in Unreal are fantastic and they're really easy to work with. Actually, Tyler and I work with this incredible artist, Connor, who he's got a bunch of YouTube videos. I think Tyler said he linked a bunch of those in your course the other day. Definitely watch those and check out his other videos because he does a bunch of lessons on lighting and he's done all the lighting for our games and things look absolutely incredible. I should show you also. Let me find Static. So Static was the second game I ever worked on. And one of the things I want to state with this is that this was the second thing I ever worked on. It was the No, I'm so sorry. This is the technically, I think it's the third thing I ever worked on. So we started doing static, and this was my first time doing a project in Unreal where I was pretty much taking the programming lead. I had done a game called Private Detective Punch Drunk where I worked with this incredible programmer, Andre, but Andre really took the lead there. I just helped when I could. Static was the first one that I really went through and programmed, but I did most everything in it. I did the lighting, I did all the programming, I did all of the post-processing effects. And this was a long time ago, so I was not very good at it when I first started. Connor came through and said, "Oh, let me see what I can do with the lighting in this." And he went through and completely redid all of the lighting in the game, and it looks 20 million times better. So these actually are like bars of light that are animated going up and down that actually is projected in the light source that's on the ground. It looks so good. And so it was worth us re-releasing this game because Connor made it look like a completely different game just by going through and working with the lighting. Like that's why he just stresses like you can make a game look completely different just by having good lighting. And it takes time. You're going to be fiddling with values to try and get the right amount for everything, but it's worth it. And like that's why there are dedicated lighting artists. Like if you like doing this, there are jobs that are just doing lighting art because it's a whole process. I'm trying to think if I have other examples. I wanted to show more for the 2D stuff because it's really important to talk about lighting for 2D because I don't feel like it's really, I don't know, considered. But it's so important because it's like so some of these images are not the final images. Like some parts of this have to be done in engine to work properly. And when they're in engine, they have shadows. So like all of this water here, it's animated in RPG Maker. So it is producing its own shadows as if, it can detect the edges. And that's important because if these need to project a shadow over the water of how it should actually look. It's actually a really fantastic way to show this. Give me 1 second. I have just the thing. Where is it? Uh no clip website. I'm sure if you've had any of my classes, I know I've shown you all this. But this actually works really well in explaining how it works for 2D, even though this is a 3D game. So in Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, they were very restricted in what they could do with it because they were on the GameCube. The GameCube was not a powerful console, and this game is enormous. For anybody who's played Wind Waker, I mean, you can sail anywhere. All these places. Granted, I don't think the view distance was as good as this on GameCube, but you can sail to all these places. Like you eventually get the freedom to just sail, and it's enormous for a GameCube game. So what they had to do was the artists for this, and I actually think this is a big reason why that this style is so hard to replicate because this isn't just cell shading. This is far beyond cell shading because the artists had to go and actually paint on the shadows for much of the map because the game was not capable of processing dynamic shadows. So when you see these dark spots all along the actual water's edge, this is actually painted into the texture because there's no way to actually project this. And because they do this for so much of it, they can use shadows for when they actually need it. Because, there's different times a day in Wind Waker. So they need to be able to have different kinds of shadows. But the way they can get away with it is that so much of it is actually just painted on. I can actually find um I always forget the name of the island. Windfall Island. Windfall Island has the best exposure because you can really, I mean, this is all painted into the texture. And you can actually see because see this barrel should have a shadow on it. It doesn't, and it's because it's not actually taking shadows. It's the darkness is painted on the actual water. So that's why it's you I don't know if we can see it because I can't remember if the day and night cycle works in website no clip. It's been a while. The game actually switches out texture maps based on the time of day. So if they so that way it can change the shadows for the map based on when the day is, and it doesn't have to actually calculate shadows. Like I said, I can't stress enough that lighting is one of the most expensive parts of game development. So finding any way to get through it without it being as expensive as possible is the best way to do it. When it always been on Quack, I'm trying to use lights as sparingly as possible because it will make it so the game runs on far more machines. For Wind Waker, they needed this to be able to run on a GameCube, and so all of the shadows had to be pretty much painted in. He's not doing too good. You actually see because he has no shadow underneath him. None of the characters really do. See how this is the shadow is actually just painted onto the texture. It was good. It works. It works really, really well. And I think that's the only way you could have had a game like this on the GameCube. But it's crazy because that's the kind of things you have to think of when you're doing the lighting for a game is that it has to run well. And when people are trying to optimize a game and they're finding out where the issues are, I mean, I can tell you from our experience working at Dogwood, the first thing we look at if there are optimization issues is how do we fix the lighting. So lighting is 90% of the problem. That's why in Unreal Engine there's specific tools for you to see like how expensive lighting is in different parts of the map because that's usually going to be the problem for when you're having performance issues. Now, I'm not, now, of course, you don't have to go and worry about painting shadows on your map unless that's the kind of game you're trying to do. It, Machines are powerful enough for you to handle lighting, and you can pretty much just work with what Unreal Engine gives you as long as you're not you shouldn't create 500 light sources all at one point, but if you follow the best practices for lighting, it works really well. And also because Unreal has so many tools for tracking your light usage, it's really easy for you to find problem points and actually be able to diagnose them without having to be like, oh, I don't know where these lighting issues are. They're pretty easy to find. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to go over for lighting. Um, I really appreciate you all being here for this guest lecture. I hope it was helpful. I'm really happy I had to talk about the Oblivion remaster because I was looking for an excuse to do that all day. I wasn't able to in my last lecture today. So I really hope that this was helpful, and I hope that for any of you that do want to do lighting, please, please, please look up Connor White's tutorials. Tyler will definitely link them in your courses, but his stuff is incredible. He's made our games look so 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 good, and if you want to do lighting art, he's a fantastic place to start. So, thank you everybody. Have a great one.